Just wanted to first start with a thank you to G&G Law, to Ian and Michelle for being with us here this morning to talk about business entity formation. It's something that we get lots of questions about, and it's a good review. I am Heather Sanger with the Uptown Business Center. We located out of the Uptown Chamber of Commerce and Uptown United. The Business Center's purpose is to provide licensing and permitting support, financial resource support, and kind of sector-specific support to our small businesses, which is kind of just largely on the north side. So thanks for joining us today. This is being recorded, so we'll be sure to share it out to everyone and to also make it available to the public once this is through. I'm going to pass it over to Michelle to kick it off, get us started, and there will be time afterwards for questions.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Heather. Thank you for having us today. We're really excited to talk about starting a business. And thanks for everything that you're doing with the Business Center. It's such a great resource for businesses. I would encourage all businesses starting out to reach out to them because it's going to be really helpful. So I'll dive into the presentation. I'm sharing my screen now. So legal considerations for small businesses. As an attorney, I'm an attorney, so first, the legal language, get that out of the way. Just a quick disclaimer that don't provide any confidential information during this presentation. Attorney-client confidentiality doesn't apply until we're in an attorney-client relationship and when we're talking when there's no one else around. And just keep in mind that the information during this presentation is for informational purposes only, and we can't give real legal advice unless we know the full parameters of your situation, so it's not considered legal advice until we have an engagement set up. That's me, a little bit about myself. I am a small business owner myself, so I know what it's like to get one started and keep it running and worry about all of the things. I started G&G Law back in 2011, and I did that after my husband and I had started a different tutoring business before that, and I realized that it's pretty difficult to find an attorney to work with businesses that are just starting out, that are accessible and approachable and easy to talk to, and also cost effective. So our mission at G&G Law is to make legal services accessible to small businesses, and that's why I started G&G Law. So that's our mission. And we provide transactional legal services for small businesses to help them get going and keep growing. Transactional means that we draft contracts and help with business formation, help with things like trademarks and applying for different certifications with the government, but we don't do litigation and we don't go to court. Just a brief overview of our services. We have an outside general counsel package for businesses, established businesses that have ongoing legal needs. And through that package, we offer a flat fee for legal services on a monthly basis. We also do entity formation like LLC formation or corporation formation, draft, review, negotiate contracts, help with employment issues, employment contracts, employee handbooks, that type of stuff. Intellectual property, we do a lot of trademarks and also make sure that your intellectual property is being protected through your documents and your contracts and that type of thing. And then we help with buying and selling the businesses. So we say we help all the way from get going and keep growing, from formation of the business to exiting your business. And to go over some legal entities, some legal questions, the first topic we're going to cover is entity formation. For businesses starting out, I would say the number one question that I get is, what type of entity should I form? Should it be an LLC? Should it be a corporation? What's best for me? But before even getting into that, I want to talk about entity formation. What's the point of forming an entity at all? And this is from a legal standpoint. There might be tax reasons to form an entity as well. For that, you need to talk to a tax attorney who we have on board here at G&G Law, or talk to your accountant about the tax purposes. But here are the legal purposes. If you do nothing, so if you are performing business services and hence you're a business owner, or if you call yourself a freelancer and you receive wages through a 1099, you're a business owner. If you have an Etsy shop, you're a business owner. If you do nothing with that business, then you'll be considered either a sole proprietorship or a partnership if it's more than just yourself. But if you do form an entity, like an LLC, a corporation, an S corporation requires you to form an entity, a PLLC, the benefit of that is you get liability protection. And liability protection means that the assets in your business are separated from your personal assets. So any business risks, if you get a judgment against your business for something that you've done, if you have an entity set up, it would be very difficult for that person that filed a lawsuit against your business, got a judgment. It'd be difficult for them to collect the money in your personal bank accounts or your spouse's wages. That type of money that's personal, it'd be hard to get. So entity formation is a really easy, quick, inexpensive thing that you can do to actually get a high level of protection. Now, when it comes to choosing your business entity type, there are two main options that I'm going to go over. So a corporation versus an LLC. So with a corporation is good for some businesses, but it does have a lot of downsides. And the downsides include it has double taxation, which means it's taxed at both the corporate level, and then any money that the shareholders make, that's taxed as well. There's a lot of formalities with running a corporation. So you have to have a board of directors. You have to have an annual meeting. You have to keep really specific meeting minutes for all the decisions that are being made. That type of thing. And it's really important to do those things to keep your corporation going and making sure you get that liability protection. The one benefit of a corporation is a lot of times if you need to raise venture funding or venture capital, that's what they prefer for whatever reason. Corporation as compared to an LLC, which is a limited liability company. An LLC doesn't have that double taxation. It has pass-through taxation. So tax-wise, if you don't do anything else with your LLC to elect a different type of tax, then you are still considered for tax purposes either that sole proprietorship or that partnership, and you're taxed only at the earnings that you make and not taxed at the corporate or company level. There's fewer legal and formalities with an LLC. So you can have a board of directors if you want. You can have an annual meeting. You can keep really detailed meeting minutes. Sometimes it's recommended, but you're not required to do so. And then there's a lot of flexibility in terms of with your partners. There can be different levels of partnerships. You can distribute the profits and loss. It doesn't need to be distributed in proportion to the percentage of your membership interest. Overall, LLCs are the easiest entity. Then the S corporation. So a lot of times I get asked, should I be an LLC or should I be an S corporation? And that question doesn't exactly make sense, because the answer is you can actually be both. You can form your entity as an LLC and then elect to be taxed as an S corporation. So what an S corporation is a tax status that's filed with the IRS. And whatever entity you form, whether it's a corporation, an LLC, a PLLC, which we'll talk about a little bit later, with those entities, you can elect to be taxed as an S corporation. And the reason that some people do it is that it may have tax benefits. So that's something to ask your accountant or your CPA or your tax attorney about, of whether those tax benefits kick in for you. I was just actually talking to our tax attorney at G&G Law, Jen, yesterday. She says it's actually a lot rarer than business owners expect to get any tax benefits from the S Corp election, especially because when you are taxed as an S corporation, you're required to pay yourself as an employee, which means you have to go through the hassles of setting up payroll systems and making sure you're paying payroll taxes. And then also all of the formalities that apply to a corporation. Once you're taxed as an S corporation, you have to conform to those formalities as an S corporation. So sometimes it's just not worth it. Then in terms of other entity types, if you're a professional licensed by the IDFPR, which, you know, if you're licensed by the IDFPR, you know that it's the Illinois Department of Finance and Professional Regulation. So these are individuals like therapists, licensed social workers, physicians, dentists, all sorts of other ones too, like pawnbrokers are licensed by the IDFPR. Massage therapists are often licensed by them. Nail technicians. There's a lot. But know that there was a recent change in the law. And now if you are one of those professionals licensed by the IDFPR, you have to form a PLLC, and you're not permitted to form an LLC. It has to be a professional limited liability company. And we've gotten word that the IDFPR is actually cracking down on this now. So it's really important, if you are a professional licensed by the IDFPR and you're starting a business, start it from the get-go as a PLLC. If you already have a business and you're running it as an LLC, it's a really good idea to convert it to a PLLC. And then the last entity type, which is not really an entity type, but I get asked about it in this category. And I'm getting questions more and more lately about B corporations, which I love. So what is a B corporation? A B corporation is a business that has the mission to balance profit and purpose. So historically, case law, the courts have said that a business's number one purpose is to make its profits as high as possible. And that really goes against the grain of what a lot of people go out to start their business to do. So there's companies now like Ben and Jerry's and Patagonia that are really mission based, and they say, yeah, we want profits. We don't want to be a nonprofit, not for profit company, but we also care about the environment and care about people, and we want to make that part of central to our business as well. So they want to meet the highest standards of verified social and environmental performance, public transparency, and legal accountability. There are ways to set up your entity with the Secretary of State as a low profit LLC or as a B corporation, but we usually recommend don't go that route. So what you can do in Illinois is set up your entity as an LLC, and then there's a certifying body that you can apply to, and they can certify your business as a B corporation so that you get the marketing benefits of saying, hey, we're mission-based, we're mission-oriented, and there's a third party out there that certifies that that's the case. The legal requirements for that are you have to have specific purpose language in your articles of organization when you form your LLC, and that same language in the operating agreement as well. And I'll talk about the operating agreement a little bit more. So highly recommend, definitely talk to a lawyer about what entity type is right for you and your business. And I would say do this before you form an entity for your business. You know, LegalZoom doesn't know the ins and the outs of, in Illinois, is a PLLC required and who is it required for, that type of stuff. The other important thing when you are forming your business is your operating agreement or your central formation documents. So your operating agreement is a formal document that outlines the structure and guidelines for managing your business. Now, it's called an operating agreement when you form an LLC, but if you formed a corporation, then it's called the bylaws and the shareholders agreements. It's highly, highly recommended that businesses have an operating agreement. We highly recommend that you have it, follow it, and know what it means. If you do bring on investors in the future or try to get funding or apply for certifications, they'll want to see these formation documents. And then if you're starting a business with others, it's extra important that you have this in place because it gets in writing those expectations and requirements and how you vote and make decisions with the other people. So this is your partnership agreement that says, what do we do if there's a dispute? What do we do if we can't agree? Are there certain items that require a majority of the partners to agree to, or a majority of the membership interest to agree to? Or are there certain things like if we bring on a new partner in the future, can 60% agree, okay, we can bring on a new partner, or does everybody have to agree to that? That type of stuff goes in the operating agreement. Also, can the partners compete? Can they start the same exact business and run it with somebody else and steal clients from the business that you're running together? Or what happens when one of the partners can no longer be a part of the business because they don't want to be, or even because they become disabled or die? So it covers those situations. So key terms to include management, voting, conflict resolution, equity, buy-sell terms, capital contribution, so how much money each partner put into the business, even more than that. The non-compete that I talked about, there's a lot. We make it really, really easy to go through a process to make those decisions together if you're in a partnership with someone else. And actually, our clients have come back and said, you know, going through that process, just going through that and setting expectations and getting stuff in writing and making decisions, it was key to being able to work together and talk about those sort of sometimes difficult conversations throughout the course of running a business together. So we really like the process of going through and walking people through and making it as easy as possible, but also helping people get through the awkwardness of those sometimes difficult conversations too. So put an operating agreement in place, follow it, and know what it means. Know that it exists. Sometimes I'll talk to clients who come to us, they have a problem in their business, but they've already set up their business. And I say, oh, great. So you have an LLC. Do you have an operating agreement in place? And they say, what's an operating agreement? And even though they went through LegalZoom and set up their business, so I know they have an operating agreement because that's part of their process, it's useless if you don't know what it says and you don't follow it. So make sure that you understand it. Next section, and open it up if there are any questions. Please feel free to jump in or pop in. Happy to answer those. Contracts. So after getting your entity set up, for most businesses, I would say having a really good client contract in place is the next most important process to protect your business and protect yourself. So a client contract is a contract that outlines the services or products to be provided, highlights the terms, and gives the other important protections. For an online business, it's usually a terms and conditions page. For a services business, it's often an MSA, which is short for a master services agreement. But we're moving away from that language now, so we're trying to avoid using the word master. So we call it client contracts overall, but services agreement, consulting services agreement. It actually makes most sense to name it based on what your business is and really customize the contract to your business. So is it necessary? Like I said, after entity formation, a client contract is the best way to protect you and your business. But a lot of times, business owners come to us, when you just start your business, a lot of times your first customers or clients are at a close-knit circle. So you have your friends of friends. I would say, as you get to the next wider circle, so now you're further removed from the people that you're working with as part of your business, that's the moment when it's really, really important to have this contract in place. It's great to have it from the beginning, but I'm a business owner myself, and I know you got to prioritize. You have to prioritize. So in terms of priorities, that's the moment where it makes sense for a lot of business owners. So key terms to include, our process for this is to sort of talk to the business owner and say, hey, what are your problems? What are the roadblocks? What's slowing your business down? What do you hate to do? And what are your biggest risks and liabilities? Like, what keeps you up at night? So a lot of times, the biggest problems are the scope. So our clients, these businesses have a services agreement. They say what they'll do, and then their client keeps saying, oh, can you also do this? Can you also do this? Can you also do this? And you want your contract to be clear about, yes, sure, we are happy to do extra, and then you have to pay us this much for it. Or if you do a really good job for your client, you want to say, hey, let's continue this. Here's the next project I can do. And you want to make that a super easy process. So that to solve for that, we structure the contract as that master services agreement, but the primary contract with all of the main terms, and then add on scopes of work so that you can easily add on scopes of work in the future. Also, what I hear from clients is like they say the biggest thing is chasing down people for money. They just want to get paid. So those payment terms in the contract are really important. So making sure there's a timeline for when payment can be provided, that you charge interest, getting paid in advance whenever possible. We try to include those types of terms. Yesterday, I actually talked to two potential clients in the fitness industry. For those potential clients, their biggest concern, what keeps them up at night, is liability. So that liability waiver of having their client say, yes, I understand the risk of this. Yes, I accept this risk, and will not sue you if something happens there. Intellectual property rights go in that contract. So even for consultants, a lot of time consultants have copy and they give presentations. So they have slides like this that they use over and over again. You want to make sure that if you're signing a contract with your client, that you're not handing over the ownership rights to those slides, to those things. If you want to use it over and over again, make it clear that you own those. What happens if things go wrong? Can you get out of the contract? That's an important provision too, the termination provision. So highly recommend customize your client contract to your business. And again, know what it says. That's another part of when we go through the process of drafting these types of contracts for our clients. We make sure to educate you about what every provision says. Try to get rid of as much legalese as possible so it's easy to understand, and then empower you to work with it and tweak it yourself so you can know exactly where to make those changes, or if a client comes back with negotiations, you can comfortably do those negotiations. We're happy to help, but we want our clients to know what's in them and work with it. Next area just to think about is intellectual property. A big part of the intellectual property protections actually does go into that client contract, making sure you have those confidentiality provisions and making sure that you own what you want to own in that. Another important thing to think about and this is really for businesses that are building a brand. So if you want the name of your business to evoke what your business does, and you want it to be unique, and you don't want anyone else to use it, and you don't want anybody else to stop you from using it, then considering applying for trademark registration is important for your business. The first step to getting that trademark is making sure your name is available. And if you want to do a quick and dirty search for yourself, the key is first make sure it's a unique name and not descriptive. So you would never be able to trademark a name like grocery store. That's too descriptive, or a law firm. You couldn't get a trademark for that. So as unique as you can get it. And actually Google the word is here for a different reason, but it's a good example of something that is unique and not descriptive. And so a good brand that you could trademark. And then you want to make sure no one else is using it. And the way that you can make sure no one else is using it is do a Google search, see who else is using it. If any results come up, are they in the same industry that you're in? And then you could also go to the US and PTO website, US Patent and Trademark Office website. And there's a search function for search for a trademark. It's a little more confusing to use, but it's definitely possible to do on your own. And then our process for helping our clients apply for trademark registration is we do an even more comprehensive search. We call it a comprehensive search, where we search Google, we search the USPTO database, we search every state trademark, every all the state company names, and then we can give you a really good idea of if we think that it will be successful to file for this trademark. You do have common law trademark protection once you use the name in commerce, as long as you started using it before anybody else started using it. You do have the rights to continue to use it. But you do have more protection if you register your trademark with the USPTO and you have better proof that you started using it earlier. So there's a link here. We could follow up with it too. We have tons of information on our website about how to, when you should think about applying for trademark registration. How do you do it? How can we help? What's our process? And then finally, this is the last topic I'll talk about for this presentation, but employee issues. And this is really just the basics of employee issues. This is something that I could definitely go on and on and on and on about. There's a lot to it. But most importantly, from the beginning, when you hire your first employee, two really big issues to think about. And the first is, are you hiring somebody as an independent contractor or an employee? Make sure you're classifying correctly. So this is probably the number one mistake that we see businesses making is hiring people to work as independent contractors or as 1099s, and when they really should be classified as an employee. And we have seen businesses, even very small businesses, get hit by fines and fees and have back penalties because of that misclassification. So the government entities have a policy of wanting workers to have the protections of being classified as an employee. So it's important to err on the side of employee. I'll talk about it more on the next slide too. But then the other most important issue from the beginning is you want to, when you do hire an employee, you want to make clear that most likely, unless physicians' offices might be one exception where you have contract employees, but most businesses want to hire their employees as at-will employment. At will means that either party may terminate the employment relationship at any time with or without notice. And if you're a business owner, you want to make it clear that, something is not working out with the employee. You want to be able to terminate that employment. Or even if things are not going well with the business and you just can't afford to keep that person on anymore, you need to make it easy to be able to let that person go. So it's important to put at will language, make it clear in the offer letters, informal email offers, employee contracts, handbooks, make it clear that the employment is at will. Because it is automatically in Illinois, but it's sometimes easy to get into this trap of promising employment for a certain time, which would make it a contract. Like, okay, so sometimes you'll say, hey, there's a probation period for 3 months, and then after that, we'll definitely be able to keep you on for a year, right? Does that sound like a promise? Because if it could be construed as a promise, that might be actually contract employment instead of at will. So to avoid that, put that clear language in. In terms of independent contractor versus employee, I sort of like to highlight the worst case scenario because a lot of times clients, it's hard to convince people when the standard in the industry is to hire 1099 contractors, to hire independent contractors. I know that it happens all the time, but I still recommend not doing it because the worst case scenario is we've had clients where this has happened. They hire individuals, workers as 1099s, and then those individuals have other jobs. And then one of those individuals gets laid off or fired from their other job. And so they go, as they should, go to apply for unemployment benefits. When they fill out the application for unemployment, the form says, list all of your employers. And that person, because the language is not super clear, doesn't really think it through and then lists the business owner's business where they're hired as a 1099 contractor, but they list them as their employer. That triggers an audit with the IDES, the unemployment agency, to say, wait a second, they're listing this business as an employer and they've never paid any unemployment taxes. We need to look into this. And that triggers an audit. And the IDES is probably the worst government entity to work with. Their deadlines are so quick. They'll mail out a form and then say you have 10 days from the date of this form to respond to this form. It's ridiculous. Especially with the way mail is in Chicago. So that happens a lot. Be very careful. For a quick classification test, if you do want to defend it, for the IDES, if you have a worker who is performing services, the only way they can be considered an independent contractor is if they perform their services without any control or direction, and the services they're performing is unrelated to the hiring business's core function, and they're part of an independently established trade or business. So me as a law firm, I could hire so if I'm hiring somebody for doing legal work, so going directly to, we do small business transactional law. If we're doing that and they don't have their own independently established trade or business, then they should be classified as an employee. But if I was hiring somebody to build my website or design my logo or clean the office, that makes more sense as independent contractor. And then these are just like really quick best practices for employment law, quick and dirty. Best practices, you have to pay overtime or don't require work over 40 hours. It's really hard to get exempt or salary classification for employees. So unless you're getting a lawyer involved on whether somebody is exempt or not exempt, we say err on the side of not exempt from overtime and then pay overtime or don't require them to work over 40 hours. Pay minimum wage, which actually I think it increased again. This is not updated in 2021. Oh no, it hasn't. It's not July 2020 yet. So it increased July 1st, 2020. It's going to increase again, but right now it's $13.50 per hour for businesses with 4 to 20 workers in Chicago. $14 per hour for businesses with more workers. It's increasing every year, and it's the path to 15. Sick leave is required in Illinois. That's, in Chicago. So that's a recent Chicago ordinance that now 5 paid sick days are required per year. It accrues over time. Vacation is not required, but you must pay out vacation when the employment is terminated. And that's why you see in offer letters that, somebody accrues 1.2 days of vacation each month. Because if you give the full 10 days of vacation in the initial offer letter, and then that employee quits 2 days later, the business is on the hook for paying out all of that 10 days of vacation time. Focus on diversity and inclusion in your business. So have policies in place for reporting discrimination and harassment. And a really good place for that is your employee handbook. And there's a new law. I think this is an Illinois law. In Illinois, you're not allowed to ask about previous salary at any point during the interview process. So pay attention to that. There's so many employment laws, it's really hard to keep track of them all. Another best practice is you're required to have posters from the Department of Labor, both the Federal Department of Labor and Illinois Department of Labor, hung up in the business, or if it's remote, just available to your employees remotely. Read through those and know what they say and make sure that you're following all the requirements for paying fair wages and making sure you're giving the breaks you're supposed to be giving and all of that. But that's all that we had for sort of the basic overview of what some legal considerations you should be thinking about when starting your business. Of course, every business is different. Considerations are different for businesses. So do highly recommend talking to a lawyer about the specifics for your business. But I'll open it up to any questions if there are any.
I had one really quick. Actually, you mentioned a couple of times the service LegalZoom, and I've gotten a couple of questions about that too, or folks will say, yeah, I've got all that stuff covered. I did it through LegalZoom, and I don't know too much about it, but it seems like it's kind of broad. So maybe if you're familiar, can you touch on like some of the things that working with like I'll say real for lack of a better term, like a person, an attorney who is a physical person as opposed to like a service like that.
Sure. Yeah. And one of our focuses are we always aim to get a deep understanding of our clients' businesses and our clients. And the other thing that we want to do is earn a long-term relationship with our clients. So we're asking questions and we're helping our clients find ways to figure out what they don't know. So sometimes, clients come to us and they don't know what questions they're supposed to be asking. But if we can sort of ask questions about their business, ask questions about problems, lead them to it, we can figure out, oh, this is a huge problem and we can solve that problem this way. And that's just something that you can't do with an online service, where you really have to be in control and you have to know essentially what you don't know in order to get the answers to your hardest questions. So we try to have that personal relationship and that focus on customizing our legal services. And then there's some things like this recent change in the law with professionals licensed by the IDFP are now cannot form LLCs. They have to form PLLCs. But those online services had nothing about that on their websites. There was no information about that. There's just things that they're not keeping up with all the way, and aren't really focused on customizing for each business. Good question.
And converting an LLC to a PLLC is a service that you can help folks through.
Absolutely.
Great.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Awesome. I don't see any other questions coming through on my end. Oh, great. I was just going to say.
Yeah, well, reach out. Here's my email address, but also feel free. We have tons of information and resources and content on our website, which is gglawoffices.com. So hopefully you can find what you're looking for. And if not, there's a contact form, and we would just love to hear from you.
Great. Well, thanks again so much, Michelle and Ian, for joining us. This information super helpful. And again, this is all recorded, so we are going to be sure to share it out. And please contact us, contact G&G Law if you have any questions, and feel free to contact the Uptown Business Center as well. You can just reach me, Heather, at exploreuptown.org, and we're excited to help support your businesses. Thanks again.
Thanks, Heather.
All right, take care, everyone.